Oh, excuse me. I can't turn it off. Good afternoon or good morning, depending on what time and part of the country you're located. Welcome to all of our friends in the home design industry. For those of you who live in Northern California, our hearts go out to you. May you be safe and well. I'm Brenda Saget-Darling, the Associate Publisher of House Beautiful, coming to you from my home in Bucks County, Pennsylvania. We're all thrilled to be here with you today and the New York Design Center as part of their signature event, What's New, What's Next? Clearly, the New York Design Center and House Beautiful have had a long-standing partnership. I want to personally thank Jim Druckman, not only for this annual event, but thank you, Jim, for all that you do for our industry. From your concern for your tenants and employees here in New York City during the pandemic, devotion to the design industry, and the execution of our first ever and truly spectacular virtual Kips Bay Decorator Show House dinner just a few weeks ago. You're truly a mentor and a friend to so many of us. As we celebrate House Beautiful's 125th anniversary in 2021, the longest continuously published home design brand, and the New York Design Center in its 95th year, we will continue our partnership as we look forward to many in-person events with you in the coming year. Today, I have the great privilege of introducing House Beautiful's editorial director, Joanna Saltz. Jo Saltz has been at the helm of House Beautiful for the past 3 years and has been instrumental in the brand's phenomenal growth. The House Beautiful brand now reaches an audience of over 20 million across all of our channels. With the print magazine at the core, readers and visitors can come to us through any media platform they choose: print, digital, social, and experiential events like the one we're participating in today. True to the editorial mission to educate and inspire a new generation of interior designers and affluent consumers, today's topic, multi-generational living, could not be more relevant during the current social and economic times. No doubt, this environment has us all reimagining how we will bring our families together, live, and love our homes moving forward. Now I bring you my friend and colleague, Joanna Saltz.
Hello. I'm Jo Saltz, the editorial director of House Beautiful. And Brenda, thank you so much for that lovely introduction. I'm so happy to be here with you today with obviously the extraordinary team at the New York Design Center. And I'm so excited to be joined by 3 astounding designers to talk about multi-generational living. One of the reasons that I was so intrigued about this topic is, as many of us are experiencing, so much has changed over the last 9 months. And you know, one of the stats I had seen was that 70% of homes in America right now have multiple generations living under the roof, whether it's you've taken your parents in because of illness or because of what's been happening with nursing homes, whether you suddenly now have to rehouse your children after they'd already moved out, so much, or maybe this is also just something that's so prevalent in your culture and you just love being around family. But it does truly bring up so many challenges and advantages. So we have 3 incredible designers to talk to us today. Our House Beautiful cover star, Corey Damen Jenkins, and 2 amazing designers, Jess Weeth and Natalie Kraiem, who both appear in the November issue, which is just about to hit newsstands in a couple of weeks. So please give a warm welcome to these 3 incredible designers. Hello.
Hi.
Guys. As I said, we're going to keep this casual. I've got my tea here. It's a chilly fall day here. I'm in Western New Jersey. You guys are spread out all over the country. And so I'm so excited to get a chance to sit down and talk to you about what I think is a really fascinating sort of moment happening in the world right now. I think it's fair to say that many homes have been multi-generational for many, many years. Many of us have families who've experienced this as well. My mother-in-law, for example, both my mother-in-law and my father-in-law grew up in houses where the different floors had different family members living in any given moment. But now it feels definitely more prevalent than ever. So I'm going to just start off, and I'm going to let each one of you have the opportunity to answer. But Corey, why don't we start with you? Have you been doing a lot of multi-generational homes? Why don't you give a little description, and maybe also talk about some of the things that you've learned in that process?
Yes, thank you so much. It's so good to see you all, and I'm honored to be on this panel with such esteemed colleagues. And to your question, Joe, honestly, it's been, like you said, a staple of our culture to have multi-generational families coexisting in one household. But I do believe that in the last year, especially, there's been a heightened answer that's been required to kind of meet the needs of clients because people don't want to separate or quarantine for long periods of time away from their elderly parents. And some folks are like, listen, let's just move in right now and make it all work. We've had 2 different clients come to us about doing that, moving in their elderly parents into their homes. In one situation, we not only have multi-generational energies at work, but we also have multi-religious energies at work, which is important because people have certain beliefs and certain practices that tie in with their religious outlook, and the design has to accommodate that. If they had to have certain religious objects that mean something to them, or a certain place where they have to pray, when they're moving into their children's home, even if the children don't share that same faith, that parent or grandparent does, and you have to make that work. So I've had to learn a lot about how to accommodate different religions that are held seriously by certain generations, where the children maybe think it's not as big of a deal, but the parents or the grandparents think it's a major must-have, and I have to completely orient the bedroom layout or the living room layout or their loft to accommodate their beliefs and their cultures. So it's been interesting. And that's not before you even get into like the bathrooms being designed in such a way to be ADA compliant. We're putting elevators in homes now, these small little capsule tubes that people can get in because, again, the elderly don't want to deal with a lot of stairs. So it's been fun, and it's been a tremendous learning experience for me, and very humbling because these people have a right to live their lives as seamlessly as possible before this pandemic. And our job as designers is to make that bridge and make that possible for them.
I love what you're saying too. I mean, I always say that designers are natural problem solvers, right? That oftentimes you guys love a challenge and then making it as functional and beautiful as possible. So I sometimes wonder if this stuff is like, while it's difficult, it kind of makes the whole thing more fun when you got to like figure out how to get all of those brains and hearts into one unified space. Jess, I'm going to ask you, and I think Corey touched on it too, this idea too of the forever home. I'm curious about sort of like what you've been seeing and what you've been working on.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely piggybacking off of what Corey said. I feel like this past year, I would say 3 big projects of ours have been for multi-generational families. Where I currently work and live is in Rehoboth Beach, which is actually this little beach town that's 2 hours from Baltimore, DC, and Philadelphia. So we kind of have this mix of very seasonal people that come in. So that's kind of the culture that I've grown up in. But what's funny is I feel like there's always been this, with a beach house, this idea of the family compound, right? Where everyone comes and they're, there for a brief amount of time. It's, maybe just designed for the homeowners who are then kind of having guests come in and come out. So it's very transitional. It's a lot of guest bedrooms, not as personal, I guess. And I think what this year has really brought is more of a permanence to, which is probably a bigger issue, but people actually who have the ability and can afford to work from home or work remotely are now actually moving here more full time. You know, perhaps their kids are now doing school remotely. They're able to work remotely. So now 2 of the homes that I've been working on, one is for 3 generations of women, and it was intended to be a beach house. So the youngest is a young professional, late 20s, and then her mother, and then her grandmother as well. So it was a really special project, and it quickly kind of evolved to more than just weekends, where now we're really talking about how do we have a workspace. Absolutely what Corey said, the bathrooms were, you know, mobility was a huge issue for the grandmother as well. So that was a factor from the beginning, but a lot more of a full-time residence and what that meant for people that would actually be, you know, living their daily lives, not just a weekend here or there.
I'm sure it impacts the kitchen too. You're thinking about how that suddenly now you're not just getting taken on the weekends, you are having to do real cooking. So
yeah, exactly.
Multifaceted. You're not just eating a hot dog on the beach, in Rehoboth Beach. Or I also, by the way, I didn't even think about it, how beautifully spaced out all of you are, because Natalie is in New York. So we really have, and Corey's in Michigan. So we really have like, we're like getting the whole country here, and I appreciate it. Natalie, talk to me a little bit about your experience too. You know, I think also what's so interesting about what Jess is saying is this idea of something that seems kind of not permanent to turning permanent. And I imagine that that is actually what's been happening. I'm sure the people who moved in with their, whether they moved in with their children, their parents or whatever in March, certainly didn't think that by September they were still gonna be here, and now how things are changing. But tell me a little bit about what you've been handling.
Yeah, so like Jess was saying, many of my summer houses projects that I do is usually for multi-generation, different generations. So, you know, the little kids with the grandparents, the parents. In my case, it's funny because every summer I usually spend it by my in-laws' house. They have a summer home in New Jersey by the beach. And it's not just my family that joins my in-laws, it's also my sister-in-law, that she also has 3 little kids. So now we have, you know, all the cousins, the parents, the grandparents, and we're all living under one roof.
Oh my
So
God.
It's a challenge, but it's actually fun because luckily, usually it's only for, you know, 2 to 3 months during the summertime. But well, now with the situation, you know, this time really got extended. And not only that, we also, you know, we have to keep in mind the situation and the pandemic, that we can, even though we're living under one roof, we can't get close to our, you know, to our grandparents because we never know what's going to happen. So we have been working on finding solutions to this. So now in the past month, you know, things started to change a little bit, school started. So we have to be like more than careful. So usually I have, you know, we usually divide the house into 3 sections. So we have one for my sister-in-law with her kids, one for my in-laws, and then one for my own family. I mean, it's a small section. We share a bathroom. We get, you know, 1 bedroom for the kids, 1 bedroom for the adults, and 1 big kitchen, which usually is good. But now with the situation, they kicked me out of my bedroom, I have to say.
You need to start charging.
Yes. So they said, you know, you can't go upstairs anymore. Usually, like, we all sleep on the 2nd floor. They said, you can't go upstairs. We don't want the kids touching the handrail. We don't want, you know, we don't want to share the same breathing space. So we're going to divide the house into different sections, 1 for you guys and 1 for my in-laws. So it's funny because, you know, we like being there. We really love the house. We like spending time with them. So we said, okay, we'll make it work. So we suggested to sleep in the living room, I have to say. So we set it up, the living, and then they have like a back sunroom. We set it up, those 2 areas for my family, and then the rest of the house is basically for them because they need to be comfortable. So it's funny. It's, you know, it's not something that's gonna last for a while. It's been only a month, but we're finding a solution. So I actually started working on an extension of the house with a separate entrance, separate kitchen, separate everything, so that we don't need to go through this, because, you know, hopefully this will be over soon. We can resume back to normal, but we never know. And also we realize that it's actually like a good idea to have our own little entity within the house. So yeah, so now we're working on this extension with, it's a small area, it's not so big, but we get our own kitchen, our own entrance, and hopefully it will work out. But apart from that, I also have all my clients that actually go through a very similar situation, and they have to, we have to design these houses so that it works for the grandparents and the kids, and we need to really come up with many solutions, like I was saying, like having different entrances for the kids so that they could come home and, usually they make a little bit of a mess, so like, they can put their backpacks there or their shoes, and then the kids, the grandparents or the adults can have like their formal rooms where they spend most of their time.
I love everything that you're saying, and honestly, I just grabbed a pen and I started taking notes, because my favorite type of panel, I mean, you guys know I sent you some questions beforehand, but here's why I'm the worst at like hosting, because I always like something that somebody says always spawns a different question. So I'm about to throw you guys some curveballs, because as you all were talking, I was jotting things down. And let me just say too, I also love when the audience gets involved. So please send some questions. I see them coming in as well, but by all means, like, send us a question and we will certainly try to get to it towards the end. But actually, Natalie, something that you're saying is making me think about, and I've had this conversation with a few people on my team, this idea of, that we were all so obsessed with open concept, right? And that you guys have probably worked on 20 million projects in which you were taking down multiple walls and making rooms as big as possible. But some of what Natalie was saying about this idea of zones within a home and you guys needing your own personal space, like, do you feel like we're suddenly going to have a resurgence of smaller spaces? Like, I mean, I'll just tell you honestly, I'm in a room right now, it's still a little bit under construction, that I built in my basement because I needed a place to hide from my family, with my parents coming over and my kids in the house, all of that stuff. I needed to be able to tuck away. Are you guys seeing that happening in your world, where zones or areas that you're having to create for different pockets of people within one roof? Corey, I see you.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think the pandemic, essentially sent a shockwave, right? Not just through our country, but globally. And because the states it's an amalgam of so many different backgrounds and cultures and peoples from all over the world, they're coming here and they're bringing with them their lifestyles and their cultures. And the one thing that everyone, no matter where you're from on planet Earth, appreciates is space, right? Well, now the pandemic has made us become a very private species. Now, globally, the world over, everyone's like, don't touch me, don't hug me, don't kiss me. I haven't had a hug in like 9 months. I mean, I miss that, obviously. But I do think that the days of seeing these huge open space concepts may be coming to not necessarily a close, but maybe a shift. I think that people are appreciating a more compartmentalized approach. They like the ideas of having separate spaces for their in-laws or their grandparents and still being able to be within a stone's throw of each other. I think even pieces of furniture, like for example, I am not a huge fan of sectionals. I will work with them if I have to, but I think that sectionals right. And now people don't want to be on sectionals. People don't want to sit even on a train in New York City. People just like get away from me. So I even think that sectionals may see a shifting as far as going back to, love seats and sofas.
Okay, your sectional just isn't big enough. That's the thing. You need bigger sectionals. You need to add more
spaceships. I can't. I won't. I just
won't. No, I hear you. I will say something that you're saying though too, and Natalie was saying it as well, is that like, the idea of like separate spaces, and having more space, there is also like a dignity to a separate entrance and to like having your own space, right? Like I even think, as one we were saying about mess and kids, and we'll get to kids in a second, because that's a whole, we could start peeling that back. And that's the other thing I put on the list that I didn't tell you guys I was going to ask you about, is the idea that if someone has something that belongs to them, it has more significance and more meaning, right? And so whether that's like a separate entrance for a parent, or someone who's ill, or someone who's living with you, even to a separate cubby where your kids can put their shoes, there is a significance and a respect that sort of lends to to an interior. When you think, Jess, I see you nodding a little bit. I don't know if this is, if you agree or what your thoughts are.
Yeah, absolutely. I think for sure. Well, it made me think of two things. I totally agree on the separate entrances. I know the one home that is actually going to be housing a family and two separate sets of in-laws. Well, one in-law on each side.
Wow.
Not 3 couples, but 4 people, but 2 separate sets of.
Is that house fireproof? That would need, like, that's like, you need that's scary, but that would.
I know, they all seem to get along, so that's good. But I know that we've spent a lot of time in the planning of this breezeway entrance that did connect to multiple kind of wings of the house. It's so it is essentially one exterior entrance, but from there it's very private on the wings that you go to. But something else that when Corey was speaking, that I was thinking about the idea of these giant great rooms and these huge like open living spaces. Something that I've seen changing around here, and maybe it's a little bit regional, but is this mentality of the outdoor living space and really trying to dedicate more time and focus and square footage to that, where we are in a very seasonal climate. We're not California. We definitely don't have the sunshine all year round. So I think before, I don't want to say like the porches and those spaces were almost afterthoughts, but what I'm seeing now, and I think a lot of it is because even the beach access was limited this year, and a lot of these communal spaces, like Corey was saying, were a lot more private. So trying to get that full life experience at home, definitely seen a shift in using some of that square footage for 3-season rooms that can be an additional space to, spend time as a family. That's not, again, just in this one big room, or maybe someone else can kind of go read outside while other people are in the living room. So again, it's kind of like just being, I think, a little bit of a different mindset of where people are going to spend their day and how that day is going to get divided up among a few generations. So I think that's interesting. Here, we have a lot of setback issues here, so there's like a very finite amount of ground space that you can put any kind of hardscaping and your interior. So it's always precious what you're like pulling from the inside to the outside. So that's definitely like a shift I've noticed, which has been kind of surprising.
It's so interesting too. Actually, Jess, if you can just turn up your volume just a tiny bit. It's interesting what you're saying that I have to jump on too. I mean, don't make me write it down, because you guys are just going to start throwing crazy, all kinds of topics at you. But the idea too that, certainly in this moment, outdoor feels like the safest place to be, right? Especially we're visiting with my in-laws outside because, it feels suddenly scary to be inside. But the idea that suddenly becomes treasured square footage in your home, and possibly your most trafficked area, probably in the last, certainly in the last 6 months, is, I think, a huge shift. And I imagine too, for all ages, certainly with my children, just getting them outside in the day. I have 3, just getting outside has been critical, which segues me perfectly into kids. And, Natalie, you started to scratch the surface a little bit. I think that it's the idea that kids ruling the home, or, kids ruling the design of a home, seems totally insane, since, for the record, they're not paying the bills. But I am curious to know if you guys are starting to see that. Certainly, I imagine with homeschooling that has changed, and Jess, you talked about that a little bit too, of things having suddenly kids needing more permanent workspaces in places that weren't supposed to have that. But how have you seen kids design for kids spaces maybe not so much changing, but maybe it's become more important, or in any facet? Natalie, I see you nodding. I'm going to let you start.
Yeah, I have 3 little kids, so they definitely rule the house, I have to say.
How old?
11, 9, and 4.
Huge fan. So different too.
Yeah, very different. So yeah, they always rule the house, I have to say. I found that now that they've been spending, all this time at home, we really have to split the house and divide the rooms into, you know, multifunctional rooms. So especially, I mean, I'm talking about new construction, but also within my house that I can't, you know, change because it's built already. But, you know, you have to find each room and try to repurpose it so that first the kids can have their space for Zoom and for school, and, you know, then another space to play, obviously. And, you know, it's like, it's very useful to have a space even for myself, you know, like if I want to exercise, you know, like right now, like the house is not big enough, but we all need to accommodate within the house to do, you know, what we usually go and do at the gym or in other places. So, you know, with many of my projects, we really keep in mind all the new, you know, the aspects of this new lifestyle. So having an exercise room, even like one of my clients, she likes to, you know, do yoga, so she wants to have a meditation room, you know, more like a spa. You know, like I mentioned before, like, you know, a different entrance for the kids. You know, every house right now is going through a transition, and we have to maximize and do the best we can to make it functional for every age. Also, I want to add just one thing, like even for dining, you know, like if we're sharing, you know, that, you know, like a meal, let's say with our parents or grandparents, you know, at least my family, we're not sitting at the same table. So just to accommodate, to have maybe like a formal dining room, maybe an informal dining room, that hopefully we can see each other and share the meal through the distance. But that's something that's happening every day in most households. Like, you know, now it's getting very cold to sit outside. So especially like last weekend, I was, you know, spending the holidays with my family, and it was freezing. So we couldn't sit outside. It was too cold for everyone. So we ended up setting a table in the foyer, you know, next to the dining room. It's still like, you know, 10 feet apart, but, you know, we make it work. But, you know, if you're building a new house, like, you know, I try to make sure that like dining spaces connect somehow, so that you can open the doors and, you know, you're not next to each other, but at least you get to see each other and spend this quality time.
I love that. Corey, I see you nodding quite a bit. I do want to just jump on to say really quickly, Natalie, something that you're touching on too, that I felt in my house. And again, I'm not a designer. I'm just trying to keep my 3 kids from killing each other. That dignity comes into play pretty heavily here too. And making spaces that allow them to be self-sufficient has been kind of something that I didn't really think about before. But even something as simple as, you know, refrigerated drawers where they can like get themselves snack when they have to come down. You know, I'm working all day, you know, allowing them, or, you know, setting up a workspace for them where they can easily plug in and everything is right where they need it. Like suddenly now this idea of being self-sufficient, which I'm sure is something that is, you know, multi-age issued, but I've suddenly realized how critical that is. Corey, talk to me a little bit about kids in your universe and what you're sort of seeing.
Well, the number one request that we've been getting from past clients that have come back into our orbit in the last, you know, several months has been completely revamping the kid spaces, right? And really trying to maximize the square footage that they have existing in the home into new approaches for their kids' activities. So now we're looking at, you know, spaces underneath stairwells. We're looking at, you know, taking a bunk bed now and making an office underneath the bunk. Repainting rooms in vibrant colors, you know, to Jess's point earlier, I think a lot of times parents consider the kids' bedrooms as almost like an afterthought to an extent. Like, I don't know why, but for some reason we spend so much time and money on the babies when they first come in as far as the nurseries, and then once the kids become like 3, it's like you're off on your own, whatever. Well, now, after the pandemic, and all these kids are like trapped in these little cells, the parents are like, oh my God, I have done such a disservice to my kids by giving them this cream and beige, blah, you know, existence. Can you please hook it up? So now we're sitting down with children, and I enjoy taking the parents with their kids and interviewing the kids with the parents, because the children are their own generation. Their needs for technology to be sewn in seamlessly into the design is very important. Their need to have color and pattern and all the vibrant things. They're much more daring young adults than a lot of times we are, as far as color and being adventurous with that. And then communicating that in such a way to where they feel comfortable. And the parents love the outcomes of we're revamping these spaces, but because, to Natalie's point, it keeps the kids out of their hair. And when you're in a shutdown situation, you only have X amount of square footage to manipulate. Space may be a premium. And so we can make these spaces as attractive and gorgeous and functional as possible. The kids will literally get lost in those spaces and not come out. And that's great for the parents. And as a designer, I've done my job. You know, that's the goal.
You know, those baby gates work even when they're older. Just
There's a tripping hazard.
I'm not kidding. They can get right over them. They can step right over the gates. Okay, they can. It won't work on my 14-year-old. He can figure it out. I love what you're saying. I also think, you know, I think part of the fear kind of is, and honestly, it's a little bit also of like what Jess was talking about before, of like when it's not a permanent space, it gives you a little bit of different kinds of freedoms. I think the fear with, I mean, honestly, I was going to say it with kids, but I'm sure also with like elderly, is you kind of don't know how people's tastes are going to change, right? And sort of the reason why you don't want to invest in making something great for a 8-year-old is because by the time they're 11, they're going to be tired of it. So you kind of are left having to guess sort of what the future might look like for that person. I imagine too, like, and I'll say it too, just in my personal experience with my father, who passed away last year in the spring, you know, within a matter of 2 years, he'd gone from being able to walk to being in a wheelchair. And little did my mother know when she bought the house that things were going to change so dramatically. And so the amount of foresight that it takes as a designer to see sort of what the future might look like. I mean, I really commend you guys. I can't imagine that that's an easy task for you as you're sort of looking down the road to figure out how people are going to be using this house, not just now, but possibly a few years from now, is a difficult challenge.
Even with kitchen cabinetry, you know, designing cabinetry in such a way to where things that can be easily accessed by young people and those who are older is key. Because I know I have one client, her mother has back issues. You know, her mother's in her early 80s, and she does not want to be bending down trying to get the cereal box out, or, you know, going into drawers that are too low for her in the kitchen. Kids often have the exact same challenges. They won't be able to reach things in such a way that they can get it to themselves. So designing long-term investment pieces like the kitchen and other spaces that are investments, keeping that in mind for the future makes it much more conducive for multi-generational family members to use for years to come.
I love that. Jess, I see you nodding too. Do you have something you want to add?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I'm glad that kind of the form part of the conversation came in as well, because I think we've been talking so much about function, and that's like so important, absolutely. But what, you know, Corey was saying about creating these spaces, whether it's for kids or adults to get lost in like their spaces, but then coupled with, if you're working with, you know, the home I was speaking to that had the 3 generations of women, this was an opportunity, a house to be built from the ground up that they planned on making a lot of memories in, and the whole process was very hands-on. So it wasn't just, you know, where you might have one client driving the, you know, vision or saying like, oh, I've always thought this. It was truly separate ideas, and styles and tastes were very different. So it was definitely a challenge to give them something that they were all excited about, aesthetically as well as functionally in those shared spaces. You know, the daughter was a little bit more modern and definitely, you know, liked things a little bit more clean lined, where, you know, the mother maybe was a hybrid of her and the grandmother, who was, you know, glamour and loved everything Parisian and very, you know, European inspired, and you know, a little bit more decadent and kind of over the top. So it was trying to unite that, and then in their own separate bedrooms, creating a space that felt like really personal to them while still feeling like cohesive with the house. So that's where we were able to inject a little bit more fun, a little more pattern, a little, you know, things that maybe spoke to their separate tastes a little bit more. So I know it's different than kids, but it still, you know, was like designing for 3 separate clients in that sense, but then, you know, finding what united them. You know, they all loved blue, so that was, you know, that was nice. So we at least had like a springboard for the palette, and you know, it was a beach home for them, so we were able to do some textural things that everybody aligned on. But it was definitely a challenge to like fit not only the functional needs as well as the stylistic desires to make everybody happy at the end of the day.
But I gotta tell you, even you saying that, like, I'm sure, first of all, again, problem that you figured out, and I'm sure you had took joy in having to work out that issue, but also like, I will not say silver lining. I won't say it, because it's too many people have, you know, sadly lost their lives in this pandemic. But I will say that, you know, I'm sure in a lot of ways, the design you brought to the table, having to keep all of those things in mind, was probably more maybe dynamic, nuanced. I'm sure there was an upside to those challenges, you know, that, you know, a woman who's very modern having to open her arms to like ornate Parisian, I'm sure maybe for a better experience, or possibly a better interior. I mean, I don't know if you would agree with that, or if you guys would agree that there are probably some positives happening here too.
It wasn't easier, I'll tell you that. But it definitely, at the end of the day, I think their personalities did come through. And I think they were, you know, so, and it would have been a lot more predictable, I suppose, if every bedroom fell into the, you know, modern coastal feel. We tweaked palettes, but it was all the same. So it was actually oddly like a common palette that kind of tied the house together, but a little bit more stylistic differences in each of the rooms, which is not something I typically, you know, would really see a lot of clients wanting. So it was, did turn out, I think, a little bit different and more unique in that way.
Corey, I saw you nodding. I mean, this must be a space that you dance in quite a bit.
Well, I love what she's saying, because I think that a lot of times we have to be diplomats in what we do as designers, and we're therapists. We wear a lot of hats, obviously, but I think that when you are bridging multiple cultures, multiple, you know, generations, different understandings of the way how things are done. Like, for example, perhaps one generation, the husband made all the decisions and the wife had no voice. Another generation, the wife has all the voice, right? And the husband understands understands sharing decision making. I have sat grandparents and their parents and their children down, where the children are my clients, and the husband and wife, who are my clients, are making those decisions together. The father and mother of one of the spouses, only the husband speaking. And the wife is asking her mother, well, Mom, what do you think? Well, whatever he wants. And I have to then diplomatically get out of both of them, well, what do you guys want in your in-law suite? Like, what is your favorite color? Like I really want to know. And so just being able to navigate different understandings of how the dynamics work within people's, you know, marriages. When you're bringing all of that and putting it all into a mixer and pressing go and shaking it all up, yes, the outcome can be very interesting, because you do want the house to reflect all the personalities that will be using the space. But it's a challenge. You have to do a lot of listening, a lot of less talking, and recognize and even encourage your younger clients who maybe not understand why their parents or grandparents are not as maybe woke, if you want to use that term, as we are in this current time frame. Respect the fact that that's how they were as young people. That was the generation they grew up in, and we have to respect that, especially if you're all going to be living under the same roof together. Because guess what? Once I'm done with this house, I'm out of here. You're on your own. So you better figure out how to coexist together and accept each other's differences and design accordingly, because it's going to be a permanent situation in some cases.
You bring up such an incredibly smart point that I frankly didn't even, it didn't really even occur to me too, like the different responses that the generations have, frankly, to design too. I mean, listen, I want to get my brownie points here for Jim Druckman's story, which he's told me a few times, that, like, you know, about when he first got married, you know, basically it was like, you know, you get married, you walk into a furniture store and you're like, and here's your living room suite and dining furniture, you know, that a certain generation, like there wasn't a ton of like autonomy in what you were creating. I certainly imagine my mother-in-law in the position that you're talking about too, where she hasn't made a design decision in like, and I know this is not Jim's experience, but like my mother-in-law hasn't made a design decision, frankly, in, you know, 40 years probably. And so if you were to sit her down now and be like, what color would you want this living room? I don't know that she could answer. I mean, God bless my mother-in-law. I don't think she's in the audience. I love her very much. But whereas, you know, certainly the next generation is been used to painting their walls and buying furniture a la carte and customizing their sofas and, you know, certainly understand how to create a space to suit their needs. It's fascinating. By the way, that's a show. What you're talking about, that family is a show. So call me after this. We'll talk about the details. Natalie, I saw you nodding to in agreement. I don't know if you have something you want to toss in here as well.
No, so I mean, when there's so many important factors, but you know, functionality is like the most important. What it froze? Did it freeze? But no, so I was saying like, you know, functionality is really like the most important factor. You know, something we really have to pay attention to in the beginning, and then beauty usually comes after.
Yeah.
But you know, when you're designing a house for children and grandparents, there's so many factors to take into account. You know, like the furniture, you want to make sure like it's comfortable for everyone. You know, sometimes, you know, right now, you know, modern furniture tends to have like low seating, you know, the seat height is low, and then the grandparents don't want to bend down and, you know, sit that low. So you really have to keep into account the profile of the furniture, the materials, you know, something that's going to be good for children, even carpeting, flooring, you know, all the surfaces are so important because, you know, like sometimes flooring could be too slippery, you know, like there's so many important items that we have to take into account to make it functional. So I recommend usually starting with the layout and then moving on to the furniture. I mean, that's usually what I do regardless in all my projects, but really keep into account, in mind, using products and materials that are going to be good for every generation.
The furniture height is something too that I do think that, I mean, certainly I've been thinking more about, but I think is something that people just in general hadn't really given much thought to. And I just, you know, in a personal experience, a family friend I know who had multiple generations under one roof over the past few months, you know, she had a very modern low slung sofa, and she would tell me like her dad couldn't get out of it, literally couldn't stand out of it. They ended up having to put the sofa up on blocks because the father couldn't sit. It's things like that, you know, whereas I would say sofas are probably one of those things when you don't have a designer that you're choosing more based on looks than you are on function. But that kind of thing is critical when it comes to being comfortable.
I have one client right now, I'm designing, you know, a room within their house, and they have to change the old section that's, you know, maybe 30 years old, and they really want to change it because the seat height is very low. So right now, you know, they have to sit on a chair that they pull from another room, and obviously the room doesn't look nice because you're bringing furniture from every room just to make, you know, the people that live there comfortable. And then carpeting also, they have to, you know, some people have to remove the carpets because, or the area rugs because the pile sometimes is too thick, and then it's a sleep hazard.
Or it's sliding. I mean, the same thing I would say too with tile. You know, and this idea of picking beautiful tile for a floor that the minute it gets wet, I mean, forget it. You're, you know, terrible trip hazards, slip hazards. We have 15 minutes left, and I wanted to take an opportunity to just answer some questions that I'm seeing here. Well, somebody has beef with you now, Corey, because you don't like sectionals. So I just feel like in defense of sectionals, I don't know if you want to come to the defense before you get on an onslaught of emails on sectional companies.
Well, it's kind of like, you know, look, it's kind of like being on the Supreme Court, right? I will set aside my personal beliefs and judge appropriately for the needs of the constituents before me, right? So if a client really wants a sectional, and I've done a million sectionals in my career, right? 23 years, I've done countless sectionals. And I don't even hold my nose with it. I will put some, passementery across the bottom and still jazz them up. I'll make them look like something. But the point is, I'll allow it, but I just think that people now realize that with this pandemic and just the need for having space, that they appreciate having their own little, private little section now versus everyone being on one big U-shaped thing that everyone's breathing on each other.
Totally. Listen, I'm also going to say, when you're in House Beautiful's house, all styles are welcome. You get ideas from everywhere. This is a judgment-free zone. You can have your own visual opinion, as long as you said, like you appreciate, you respect, you make the best decision for that moment. So I hear what you're saying, and I appreciate it. Another question I got, which I actually think is really interesting. We've been talking so much about lots of people under one roof, but as somebody who runs a team out of New York City, and many of those team members live in Manhattan or in Brooklyn alone, and have been alone for the last 8 or 9 months, and not seeing family. How have you guys been, it's a little different, frankly, from the multi-generational conversation, but still speaks to the idea that your home should be giving back to you and whoever comes into it. How have you guys been approaching clients who are maybe single or who are not with other people? Have you been doing updates? Have you been, sort of tending to clients who maybe don't have other people? Are there what's the word I'm looking for? Like emotional touchstones that maybe you're giving to some clients that don't have other people living in the house? I'll let anybody field that one. It's a tricky one, but that wasn't mine. That came from the audience. Well, I'll use an example that I had seen recently in a home that we were covering, which was, that somebody that we featured recently had just done a huge renovation of their apartment, kind of in the midst of this, frankly, because she was going to be alone so much that she knew that she didn't have people coming in, and that, she frankly, sort of to what we were saying before about the kids, and actually it was a designer's apartment, and she had been thinking a lot about how she had spent so much time on clients' homes and so little time on her own. And so she decided to, frankly, repaint and recover the whole thing because she needed it to be more of an emotional, like, blanket, a hug, if you will, Corey, to your point earlier. And she needed more emotional comfort from the space, which is something that I thought was really interesting. And something that I'm like, you don't really, everybody thinks about designing for the people who are coming in and nobody really thinks about, I'm sure designers think about this all the time, but, as a homeowner, you don't really focus a lot on, everybody's like, I love to entertain, so I want a big kitchen. Well, it's like, you're entertaining what, like 1% of the year, and you're living in it the other 99%. That kitchen better give to you first and then to your guests second. I don't know if you guys have thoughts about that.
I think that one thing that we as designers can do in these situations for those who are single is creating backdrops, beautiful, gorgeous backdrops for people to be able to communicate on Zoom and on FaceTime, because it's now become a thing. I mean, how many times do you see people on the news and these different reporters or different actors and actresses, and you're looking at the background, so I'm like, what in the hell? Who designed?
My favorite thing to do.
Call me. Let me help you. So I think for those who are single, who are reaching out to their family, and to even if they are dating someone but not married to them, but are separated because of a situation, creating beautiful backdrops for the selfies, for the Zoom and FaceTime calls. I think that is something that enhances their well-being. I think it's a great investment to who they are as individuals, and it communicates to their friends and family that I'm okay. You know, a life well lived is a one that is happy, right, and is successful. And I think that's one way that we can kind of create, you know, great environments for those people, and that way they can feel that they can survive and endure this very unusual chapter in our history.
I think like usually when I design houses or even my own house, it's always for the person that lives there. Even though we love to entertain, it's really, it has to reflect the person that's living there. Mm-hmm. So now, you know, with the situation and the recession, you know, people are not going out as much, and they want to invest their money in their own home just so that they can be comfortable and they can enjoy where they are. So I've been noticing like all my clients are calling, and it's actually our business thank God, like it's, you know, it's doing well because of the situation. There's nowhere to go and there's nowhere to spend money even to get dressed. So why not, you know, put it in the house, you know, whether it's a big change or a small change, just like updating the room with like some fresh pillows, maybe like new paint. It makes a difference, and it makes whoever lives there like a happier person, just to be, you know, like sometimes even when you get fresh flowers, you get excited, like, oh, look at my flowers, or a candle, could be accessories, just anything. It really enhances the mood on anyone.
Oh, please, the Amazon truck comes. I'm like, it's like the Wells Fargo wagons here. I am running down the street, so excited.
Yeah, exactly. So exciting to get new boxes with delivery.
I'm
whatever.
like a conditioner.
Smile face.
Exactly, but literally, it's like a conditioner I ordered. Like, it's nothing exciting. I'm just still so. I'm so happy to have something.
Hello.
Jess, I'll let you take the last statement because we're going to close it out after this. But I don't know if you have any thoughts about it as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, well, it took me a while to think of one to relate to that, you know, exact question. But I think I worked on a house this past year where it was a separation situation. So there were still kids for a part of the time, but then there was, you know, someone living there alone. And I think one of the things that would relate to that situation, or really anything in the past, you know, 6 months or a year, is really like using every space. I think that there are sometimes in houses these rooms that become little clutter corners, or become just like the forgotten, not talked about space. And I think that takes up physical space, but like emotional space too, of like this forgotten, like let's make sure we're using all of those spaces. So I know Natalie was speaking earlier about you know, the exercise room. You know, that was certainly something. It's like, okay, where are you going? What are you going to be doing while you're here? Let's make not just you know, the main living space or your bedroom feel like you. I think that's really important. But if you do have what was just a spare guest room or just a spare small room, like let's make that a space that makes you excited to be there, and you can enjoy it and do a different like activity there. That is something that you personally enjoy. So I think, again, that could relate to somebody who's single, living by themselves, or just people that, you know, now are home all the time. And we really can't afford to not make good use of all of the space we have in our homes when we're here so much.
It's totally true. I have to say, and I will wrap it up here, you know, the three of you, you know, I would say the challenge for the designer in this moment in particular, but certainly all the time, is having to really balance the predictable with the unpredictable, right? And you three do it with grace and elegance and respect and wisdom. And I really, truly, truly appreciate you spending the time with me today. I told you it was going to be fun, and I feel like we laughed. I'm getting a little teary. It's been an emotional roller coaster. But I love spending time with the three of you, and I wish you all the absolute best. Please stay safe and healthy, and take care of yourselves. And I can't wait to see you all again in person. And Corey, give you that hug that you absolutely deserve.
Yes, absolutely. Air hugs.
Thank you for having us. Thank you to the New Orleans Center.
So much. So much. It was great to see all of you.
You too. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.